Columbia Business School, generously endowed by Board of Overseers member Nand Kemper and his wife, Jean. This forum is held twice a year. It brings in leaders in industry, commerce, finance, and government from India and around the globe to speak to the Columbia Business School community on topics pertinent to Indian business and economy. Before I introduce Shaffi Mehta, today's distinguished speaker, I'd like to make a few school-wide announcements and some announcements about India initiatives at the school. School-wide, probably you've all heard, we just received a $100 million gift from Henry Travis, the co-founder and co-chairman of KKR, Goldberg Travis Robertson Company, and he's pledged a gift of $100 million to Columbia Business School towards our expansion into the Manhattanville campus. The Manhattanville campus is a few blocks north of the current Morningside campus, and one of the two new buildings there will be named the Henry R. Travis Building in recognition of Henry Travis's generosity. And we're currently searching for an architect and should have an update on that soon. Other things about India initiatives at the school. At the university level, there's a Global Centers Initiative, which is part of the university's efforts to expand global engagement and network for both faculty as well as students, as well as alumni. And a new global center just opened in Mumbai this year, and it's located in Mumbai, in South Mumbai. And this is a broader business university-wide initiative, but the business school will be able to utilize its facilities. And I'm sure this will be a great place for students, faculty, and alumni to get together over events like this in the future. Other announcements at Columbia Business School currently, there is a group of business school students who are participating in the Chazen study tour. I went to India with some students a couple of years ago, and I see some familiar faces from that trip. And this is a trip that goes every December to India, a group of students with a faculty member. And on the trip that I went on with the students, we visited 1298, which is what Shaffi is going to talk about today. Shaffi is a co-founder of 1298, Dial 1298 Ambulance. And other news, the South Asian Business Association is going to host the 7th annual India Business Conference in April of 2011. And the theme and panelists are not yet determined, but this is usually a huge, really interesting event which draws people all across the country. In terms of the curriculum and India and the curriculum, a couple of really interesting things. There's an international seminar that's taught in India in the Executive MBA program, and that will be taught during spring break in March. And the objective of that course is to discuss emerging issues with business executives, industrialists, as well as politicians in India. I'd like to just transition to introducing Shaffi by talking a little bit about the person I know and the case that we've written about Shaffi, about Shaffi's organization 1298 at Columbia Business School. As you all know, Columbia has a case writing initiative. It's called Columbia Caseworks, and we've developed 6 different cases relating to India. One of these is something that I wrote that was inspired by my trip with the students to 1298. And this case is about 1298's social mission. And the reason that I've really been inspired by this organization as well as by Shaffi is looking at what they're doing, not just in terms of the great businesses that he's led and created, but also in terms of giving back to society. He really believes in the social mission of his organization. He's going to talk a little bit more about how 1298 does this on the ground. But Shaffi's been inspirational to me, and I know to a number of other people, because of his passion and commitment to social justice and social enterprise. More formally, let me introduce Shaffi Mehta. Shaffi is a lawyer, entrepreneur, and a public policy analyst. He's the founder of Dial 1298 for Ambulance, an emergency response ambulance service. This was started by a group of people who were professionals that saw really bad consequences that could happen in India as a result of lack of access to emergency vehicles and ambulances in particular. As a result of very personal experiences, Shaffi and a group of friends started this organization. And today they're at, I think, $6 million in terms of revenues. They've grown a lot in the last 6 years. And more than anything else, they have provided a really essential service that everyone in a number of cities is benefiting from today. In addition to doing that, he's currently co-founded Education Access for All, which is a educational network of schools in small towns and villages across India. Just as 1298 does, this uses a cross-subsidy model where people who can afford it pay higher prices, and those are used to subsidize people at the bottom of the pyramid. And this Education Access for All provides education to economically underprivileged students and uses technology as well to provide materials for students all across the country. Before doing these, starting these exciting new ventures, Shaffi served as Senior Vice President and Head at Reliance Industries, where he was responsible for drawing up the rollout strategy and setting up 1,000 Reliance Web World Express stores across 500 districts through India. So as you can tell, Shaffi's a guy of many multi-talented with many different facets. He's above all a creator and entrepreneur and a guy who really cares. So please join me in welcoming Shaffi Mehta.
Thank you, Geeta. Thank you very much for inviting me to Columbia. And let me start off with the relationship Columbia has had with the initiatives that my friends and I have undertaken. I am not a graduate of Columbia, but the CEO of the fund who put faith in us the first time, who put $1.5 million into this project to scale up, is a graduate of Columbia. New York Presbyterian Hospital, which is a Columbia University affiliate, was believed in us when this was just a concept, and when my friend Ravi and I came to US, not knowing what ambulance service is, they actually opened the doors to us to understand the processes, protocols, the operations of ambulance service. One of your graduates has come and spent a year with us. So these are some of the key relationships which has contributed to building this organization. What I would like to talk today is about entrepreneurship and versus social entrepreneurship in terms of making a positive impact. I'll take you through the Cikitsa story. Cikitsa is the name of the company which runs 1298 ambulance service and also the Newton schools. I'll end with the newest initiative that I am working on, which is a concept of brightbusters.com. I believe that entrepreneurship itself, just because of the sheer employment opportunities it creates and the value add, it has its positive impact. But the new buzzword of social entrepreneurship, which has developed over the last 10 years or so as a separate concept from NGOs, charities, and enterprise, is something which has gone beyond value creation, wealth creation, and profit to make a difference. And I call it the social mission-driven organization, where more than the triple bottom line, the organization itself integrates social values and objectives more deeply than enterprises that practice corporate social responsibility. I'll give you an example. The example that I've listed, there are two particular things. One is a concept, one is an organization called Arvind Care, Eye Care System, which is the world's largest eye care organization in South India. The entire, it's a jewel in the field of social enterprise, and works on cross-subsidy. And the founder actually had this idea that if McDonald's could do burgers through a well-defined process and through almost like an assembly line, eye surgeries could also be done in that manner. And Arvind has grown over the years to become the world's largest eye care organization. I compare that with Stanchart. Stanchart Bank has a project called Eye Care India. And what they do is that they, as part of their corporate social responsibility, they provide around 20,000 cataract surgeries in India. But there is definitely a difference between Arvind Eye Care System, where the mission, the vision, everything in the DNA is about providing that eye care as its goal, versus Stanchart's CSR activity. And some of these names, which being from India may not be familiar, but IDE works in the field of drip irrigation. Goonch is an organization which has grown to use old clothes to manufacture sanitary napkins for the rural poor. And Lifespring is another Acumen-funded social enterprise which is setting up maternity hospitals, and it's already become the second largest non-governmental maternity care chain. And Moksha Yug Access, of which was started by my friend Harsha, and of which I'm a co-promoter. We are building for-profit rural self-help group-based dairy farming. So these are just a few examples. I now go into taking you through the story of Sikitsa, which started with 1298 for ambulance, and now also has a public-private partnership program where we serve, where we provide statewide 911 kind of service in 4 states. This is one doesn't need to explain this at all. But two key things. India has a staggering 16 accidents per 1,000 vehicles, one of the highest road accident deaths in the world. And more importantly, in this year, 2010, heart disease is going to be the #1 killer of Indians. So considering this, an ambulance service, apart from the other things of disasters, man-made disasters, terrorist attacks, etc., an ambulance is, it's a basic need in the country. Just to give you some statistic, 30% of people involved in a road accident die, according to a WHO study, die due to delay of transportation, which means that life could have been saved if a life support ambulance service was in place. When we started out in 2004, this was actually the scenario of ambulance service in India. There was no universal access number. So it was basically, like mom and pop retail store, each, one individual owning an ambulance or a hospital owning an ambulance. If you actually need an ambulance, you had to call multiple phone numbers, try and figure out whether that particular ambulance is available, or keep trying till you find one which is free. And since there was no sense of emergency preparedness, the driver wouldn't be there, he would be somewhere else, there would be no EMT anywhere near, and all these had to be organized to get an ambulance actually started after you call. There was no trained ambulance personnel. There's no recognized cadre of what is called EMT. Even now, we are fighting very hard to get the state and the federal government to recognize, like nursing, the cadre of EMTs. There's no concept of first responders, and as I explained, it was unintegrated resources. Now, the most interesting thing when we actually got into studying ambulance service first was that 90% of the revenue of the ambulance service, the existing ambulances, came from carrying dead bodies, not from transporting patients or victims to. When we studied it a little further, it was not a surprise. 50s, 60s, In United States too, the same vehicle would be used as an ambulance and a hearse van. For all these reasons that I explained, response time was very long, and because of that, naturally, people wouldn't call an ambulance to go to a hospital. So ambulances were called only in three occasions. One, of course, to transport a body, and second, when there's a lot of blood spillage, when nobody wants to take the individual in their own private cars, or the cabs would refuse. Or third, when there is a known fracture, when the doctor tells you don't cram the individual into a car. This was a situation when we started out. And we started out out of personal experiences of near and dear ones going through medical emergencies. In my case, my mom choked in her sleep, but we did not know what to do. She survived, but she was in ICU. A week later, my best friend's mom collapsed in Manhattan, and in 4.5 minutes, an ambulance came, took her to the ER. So the contrasting response is what actually got Ravi, my friend, and me thinking about why is there no ambulance service in India. But honestly, I mean, we were too involved with whatever we were doing. Probably, the aspiration of making money as the primary goal. We didn't do anything. We thought about it. We discussed. We got over together for coffee. We said we will write white papers, but nothing happened. 3 months later, one of our childhood friends died in a car accident. Just bled to death because nobody would take him from the location where he got into the accident. And that is when that evening when we friends got together, and after the funeral is when we decided, let us take one step at least and do something. Even at that point in time, we didn't have the guts to leave whatever we were doing, but we pulled in a little bit of money, bought one ambulance, not knowing anything about what ambulances are, how it runs, etc. But we were very clear that we were very clear about two things. One, we will have a state-of-the-art ambulance, but we did not know what it was. Second, that we will have the ambulance to transport patients or victims to a hospital, not to carry bodies. These two things we were very clear. And then we set out trying to figure out, how ambulances are run. And we ended up spending time in London Ambulance Service and in New York Presbyterian Hospital. So that's where we first got exposure about what ambulances are, how ambulances are run, what the processes are, what protocols are, etc. But at that point in also time, though we didn't have the guts to step out, we said that if we are getting into this, let us get into it seriously enough that, let us try to be the developing world's leading EMS provider. This is the founding team. This is my friend Ravi, whose mom collapsed in Manhattan. The lady is Shweta, who is the current CEO. Manish on the right hand side, and Naresh. The exposure that we had in US actually played a role in helping us know about the difference of what effective ambulance service can make to lives. Technology help. As I said, we started off very clearly with these three goals, that we will meet international standards in the delivery of the service. Probably naive to think that the service can be accessible, should be accessible to all persons regardless of income, and also at the same time to be financially self-sustainable. That was key, because when we studied the services, ambulances in India, what we realized was that there were a number of people and organizations donating ambulances. There would be photo opportunities, grand opening ceremonies, ambulances would be placed in localities. But soon thereafter, the organization or the team would run out of money, and then the service itself will die down. When we started this, we also decided that we will be very, very ethical, transparent, and of course teamwork. Why I emphasize this was I have to admit that there have been gray areas in all our previous lives before starting this, in managing environment and getting business. You know, I mean, not getting into specifics, but the challenges of doing business in a developing country is such that there are times when you do tread through gray areas, and my friends and I were not exactly, very clear as to what is the right thing to do when we face such situations then. But in this case, we were very, very clear about this. This is the first ambulance that we put together. I mean, for most of you here, it wouldn't, it wouldn't mean much, but it was an air-conditioned ambulance with all these cardiac monitor, defibrillator, ECG, etc. The works. We designed it based on the London Ambulance Service specifications. This is where we have reached. When we started, we had this dream that we had to have the world's best ambulance control room software. And we modeled on London Ambulance Service. You know, I mean, the annual maintenance contract of the software of London Ambulance Service runs into something like 12 million pounds. So obviously, I mean, it was a dream, but the IT competence of India came handy. What we did was we couldn't obviously take this back because IP rights were involved. We got the processes from London Ambulance Service, went to a small IT shop in a city called Pune, and got them to re-engineer at very low cost the basics of what was required, including GPS tracking, dispatch, etc., etc. And that's how we started. Now we run this software, which is the best software in which is run in most US control rooms. I'll take you through the 1298 model. And so 1298 started with the big ambulance, which is the international standard. And the same vehicle had both advanced and basic life support. From day one, we had a 24/7 control and dispatch center, which is actually what makes an EMS work. Because otherwise, you can have ambulance, but if you don't have that brain which receives calls and dispatches the nearest ambulance, it's effectively useless. This is again an example of how we thought we should go. We kept the standards exactly like in London Ambulance Service and started with the big ambulance. Then we realized that it is a challenge in terms of pricing to the customer and also reaching some of the alleyways in Mumbai. So we moved to a smaller vehicle which we added. And we grew to 51 ambulances in Mumbai. But what we realized later, and which, it's a continuous learning, we have kind of started pulling back these small ambulances because it's too cramped to actually work, one. Second, patients and victims and their families, though when given the option, choose in terms of pricing for the smaller one. The satisfaction rating is like really, really low. So though it's their choice to go for the smaller vehicle, they end up complaining about it or cribbing about it. So we are pulling this out other than in those localities where the roads are narrow and a smaller vehicle is required. So this is actually what has got us the maximum recognition in an ambulance service model, doing differential pricing. And honestly, we were very, very naive. We thought that when we started, we said that we will individually evaluate each patient and decide whether they are rich or poor and charge accordingly. And in 2 weeks, we were going out of business simply because 98% of patients or victims were being billed as poor. When we analyzed the pattern, what we realized was 70-75% of the patients were going to the private hospital, but were still being billed as poor patient. Simple, either they were claiming to be poor, or even worse, our staff would collect the money, pocket it, and just write it off as, poor patient. So we had no option but to come out with the logic which worked. And that's when we said that those who go to the private hospital, we will charge full charge. And those who go to the public hospital, we will give a 50% subsidy. And it works in India because anybody, even with borrowed money, would not choose to go to a public hospital or a government hospital. And it has worked since then very well. And we also provide free service to accident and disaster victims, no questions asked. This is another thing, in the initial days we were struggling out, we were not meeting our cause. And then we came up with this idea of advertising. And so we went to these corporates, everybody would welcome us, give us tea, coffee, and say, great idea guys, you guys are doing wonderful. You know what? It's life and death. We don't want to put our brand on it because, if it is life, it is good, but if it is death, our brand suffers. But then Tata's, which is a very socially aware group, they took the risk and first year gave us this advertisement. And at one point in time, we went a little overboard with like some 6-7 logos, which got us a magazine article which said that Formula One ambulance which sells every inch of the space. But it provided a stability in the cash flow. And what we do is that we now peg the rate for this advertisement marginally higher than the advertisement rates on buses, the billboards on buses in the respective towns. So this is an example. That, this is again a learning. When we started out, we used to pay $20,000 for the digital map of Mumbai, and then a Stanford grad came for a 3-month summer with us, and he was already had an offer with Google. And he said, guys, why are you paying all this money for maps? Why don't we use it on Google Earth? And voila, $40 a year, we get a continuously improving map, which saves substantial amount of money. And this is not the best shot. Okay, this is a macro shot. It actually gives building level views in urban India. One of the challenges that we faced, and these are things that when Geeta and Jennifer asked me to talk about, the impact. These are things that we have gone ahead and done, which we believe has made huge impact in India. We didn't have a cadre of EMTs in India at all, so we had to set up a training arm to train people to serve on ambulances. And we started this as a training arm. It's called Life Supporters Institute of Health Sciences. And we started the training with, again, New York Presbyterian providing us the training material. We also got the recognition from AHA as an international training center, and recently has been rated as the #1 training center in South Asia. Now this has now grown on to become a separate independent organization with its revenue stream. But this is structured not as a for-profit, not because we actually would like it to be also for-profit, but under the Indian education and training regulation, for it to gain accreditation, it has to have a not-for-profit status. Now there's a little bit of history which is not there on the slide. While this was going on, the largest, then third largest IT company in India, its CEO called us and said that he wants to do this service in his hometown as a giving back. And because people had, really opened us, welcomed us with open arms, sharing details with us, we also, said, great, why don't you start it, please come. And their team came, spent time with us, learned this, and they went and started the service in the city of Hyderabad. We had a major difference of opinion. They said that they want to provide the service free. And our argument was that, philosophically we said that where there is an ability to pay, one should charge. But, obviously, he was a billionaire, billion-dollar company, multi-billion-dollar company, they started it. And slowly, because of the philosophical difference, we drifted apart. Over a period of time, what we then realized was that this billionaire actually set this up as a charity, started tying up with state governments, and started drawing millions of dollars of state funds in the name of ambulance service. And when we started looking at it, what we could see was that, state was being grossly overcharged for this service being provided. We started going around knocking on bureaucrats and political leaders saying that, this is seriously, there's something wrong. This organization is charging 2 to 3 times what it should cost. And people would say, hey guys, don't be so jealous in life. Let somebody do, what they need to do in life. So we tried to bring this out, but, we couldn't. And at that time, a bunch of young lawyers who got to know about this, we got them to file for documents under the Right to Information Act, which is the equivalent of Freedom of Information Act. Collected these documents and went to the Supreme Court of India, and the Supreme Court, on the strength of the documentation, actually issued notice asking the states and this organization to explain what is going on. 2 months later, from the time the notice is issued, which was the first time a red flag is raised against this billionaire, 2 months later, he comes across as India's biggest corporate scamster with the IT company Satyam, and the person concerned was Ramalinga Raju. Defrauded his company close to $2 billion. And that's when people started believing that there is something seriously wrong. What he did was he went and signed contracts with state governments with no transparency, no tender, etc. But over time, because of the expose, states started bidding out contracts. And that is when the public-private partnership actually started opening up. And the first tender in the country actually happened in a state called Bihar, which is the poorest state and considered to be the most corrupt state. But this gentleman who's actually fighting the elections right now for re-election, he had transformed governance in Bihar. And the small capital city came out with this tender for 10 ambulance public-private partnership contract, and we bid. And because of our low-cost structure, we ended up being the lowest bidder there. And that's how we started getting into the public-private partnership space. One after the other, few other states started coming out with the bids. And now we have won bids in 5 states, 4 states are operational, and the 5th state implementation is on, which is Punjab. In our growth, what has helped us the most has been the partnerships, because if one were to put dollar value to the support that we have received, maybe we may not have been a reality, but we have got unbelievable support from international institutes, ambulance services, VCs, world-class universities, non-profits, and global technology solution providers. London Ambulance Service, when we went in, unbelievably opened up their organization to us. So all of us actually ended up spending time varying from 2 weeks to 3 months learning what ambulance services is from them. And once in a while I used to, make, so they were very, very surprised that India didn't have good ambulance service. And I used to make fun of them, saying that, we can't afford it because you actually took all the wealth away over the 200 years of colonial rule, and this is your time to give back. So I couldn't say that to New York Presbyterian guys, obviously, but they were also very, very helpful. Actually, December, there's a huge disaster management exercise which is being held for the 2nd time in Mumbai. With around 40 faculty members from New York Presbyterian flying in to help organize that. The importance of some of these exercises, we actually did a disaster management exercise with New York Presbyterian in 2008, and it's exactly 5 weeks after that when the 26/11 terror attack happened. And one of the reasons why our ambulances actually reached every location first, we were able to respond, was because of the preparatory work that we had done along with it. In 2007, when we were 10 ambulances old, the Columbia graduate, Mr. Varun Sahni, got introduced to us. He was the head of Acumen Fund. And we started talking about infusion of equity. Took some time, and in first round they came with 1.57 million US dollars, which helped us scale from 10 ambulances to 90. And in the second round, we actually got Acumen coming in with another $1 million. And HDFC, IDFC, and India Value Fund, which are India's 3 of the really blue chip financial institutions, also joining in. I've not put one name here. Our biggest recognition is that in the second round, the world's largest ambulance service company, which is an American company, New York Stock Exchange listed, which runs ambulances under the name American Medical Response. The company name is an Emergency Medical Service Corporation. They came in as a stakeholder, taking 10% stake in a small startup. Of course, at every stage, business schools and universities have helped us refine our process, hold mirrors to us to help us find the mistakes that we are doing. And as I explained, AHA has been hugely supportive. The technology solutions, what we have done is, we have, instead of, again, buying the really expensive solution, we have taken small solutions which are cost effective. We have got Indian companies to develop based on the processes and used only those IP protocol which cannot be transferred due to IP rights. We have tried to do our bit of social programs. An ambulance service can be effective only if people know about how to take care of a victim or a patient till the time the ambulance reaches. And in that respect, first responder program is very, very important. So we have a first responder program where we teach in schools and colleges. In Mumbai alone, we have trained over 50,000 youngsters in this. Now we are trying to get this as part of the curriculum, at least in the states where we are in public-private partnership mode. I'll come back to this. During the Mumbai terror attacks, our ambulances were the first to reach all the locations. As you will see from the video clippings, we actually reached 3 locations before the police reached. That is the kind of response that we could manage in such a situation. This is some other. Our first experience with a terror attack was a Mumbai train blast in July when we were a small organization. Along the way, awards and recognition has come. More than specifics, it actually helps enhance credentials and goes a long way in helping build the organization. I now move to the Education Access for All project. One of the things that the 5 of us had was fairly privileged education in the Indian context. And what we realized was that we were able to study in high quality English medium schools because we had access to urban India. There's a large number of forget the rural village poor. Even in small town India, high quality education is not there because the large percentage of the private sector investment in schools go into real urban India where they believe they can charge high fees. So we said, can we go to small towns with 30,000 to 100,000 population and try and replicate a cross-subsidy model in terms of providing high quality education. We started with one school with just first grade and fifth grade. This is the first school. It has grown to now it provides training from kindergarten to 10th grade. We just yesterday in India they were putting us through the accreditation for the +2, that is high in India it's called +2, 11th and 12th grade. We now have 2 schools. We are planning to scale. This is a very, very capital intensive project because we actually own the infrastructure. We are looking at different models to fund this, but we believe that this is about transforming lives. There are kids who come from really below poverty line families and who are doing phenomenally well in class than kids from privileged backgrounds. So, for example, for some kids, we only get kids in the lowest grade because otherwise it becomes a social cultural issue, creating complexes and all that. One of the sad thing is that we have to be very, unfortunately we can't provide universal access here, and we have had to have subjective selection. And one of the things that we do in selecting kids is the parental commitment to getting the kids to school. We know that it's not the right, absolute right way of selection. But at some point there is a limit in the number of seats, and that's what we do. We also are working on an e-learning support system, even in the smaller or the poorer families. And if you those of you who have traveled in Mumbai in the slums, you will see TV and CD player. It's very the Bollywood film culture or TV program culture. So we have actually created these CDs which can play not on the computer but on the VCD player, which cost around $40, and plugged into the TV to help the kids learn on their own, because the parents don't have education to support them in the study. Last, this is the project that I'm working on now. I'm very passionate about this and I'm having fun doing this. It came out of the battle for transparency that you know, my lawyer friends and I undertook in this battle against corruption and fixed contracts, which was happening in the emergency medical service / ambulance space. And one thing led to the other, and what we realized is that with a set of tools, we were able to achieve what somebody wants to achieve legitimately without actually paying a bribe. So without getting into the details, you know, since this group believes in free market economics, we said that we will not start it as a not-for-profit, we'll start it as a for-profit. Informal pilot has been going on for a year. We hope to launch this formally in the state of Kerala in South India in the new year. So with that, I conclude. I would like to make it interactive with questions. Just want to show one video of the response that 1298 ambulance did. So this is at 11:03 p.m. The attack happened at 10:20. The terrorists are inside. We don't know the terrorists are inside. That's our team actually pulling out victims from there. The cops have not shut down. The TV channels are just showing that terror strike can't be ruled out, and we are pulling victims out from the incident locations. Out of the 5 locations, I think 4 locations 3 locations we were the first to reach. 4th location we almost reached along with the cops. Some of the learnings out of this is that we were not very well prepared for, in spite of the training and drill that we had undertaken, we were not prepared to send our team into a terror hit locations. By God's grace, our teams came out without being hurt, but there were incidents where, instances where they were almost on the firing line. So, thank you very much, and.
talk. We're open for questions now. If you have a question, can you just wait for the mic to come to you and then raise your questions?
Thank you. That was a wonderful presentation. 2 questions. One very simple, which was, how did you choose the number 1298? I think I heard the story before, but why does that number resonate? And then following on a topic that we began in the reception, which was, if you're a social enterprise, is there a tension between accessing commercial funding for a social enterprise versus strictly social funding, and how has it progressed with your ability to access funding from the beginning till present time?
So the number 1298 is we were thrust with that number because we were very firm on our ethical, and so a greedy officer wanted I think $4,000 to get an easier number, 1299 or something like 911. We said we will not. So he actually assumed that 1298 is a very difficult to remember number, and so he allotted that to us, and we just took it and ran. so that is the story behind that. There is a tension between pure play commercial capital and enterprises like 1298. It is about setting expectations at the beginning. When 1298 went for the second round of funding, at first round of funding it was clearly Acumen, and Acumen is a fund with social mission. But when it was the second round, we did have discussions with various private equity funds and venture funds, and AMR is a New York Stock Exchange listed company. At that point in time, the expectations were very, very clearly set, and it is built into the shareholders agreement that the social mission is equally important. So it is built into the structure of the deal.
Are your control response centers centralized, or they're regional, or?
So we used to run. We had we had this day. First one was a very makeshift center, but when we ended up setting up the real world-class center, the capital expenditure required was very high, and the telephone cost was so low. So we actually used to control 3 states from the control room in Mumbai. But as the scale grew, now we have control rooms in each state.
Hi, Shaffi. I was wondering, looking long term, what do you think? How scalable is private sector providing services which are usually provided by the government in most countries? So, do you think moving forward in India and similar countries, do you think private sector has no choice but to provide these services, because government would never, because it will be very hard for them to reach the scale that the government has?
So two things. One, while we are very proud about the 1298 model, 1298 model only will work with a few conditions in place. One, there has to be a certain density of population. Second, there has to be a certain percentage of paying population. Third, the distance from an incident location to a hospital has to be relatively short. Otherwise, the cost per transport goes beyond what is affordable to a common man. So, in this situation, for this to grow to scale beyond urban India, as in United States and as in Europe, there are government paying sub-annuities through bidding processes. So that is going to be a integral part of providing universal service, especially in rural areas. In terms of efficiencies, to answer your question, let me give you an example of ambulances in the government sector before that competing organization and we came into play. The moment a driver is recruited in a government sector, his first thought process is how to make sure that the ambulance don't run. Because if the ambulance don't run, he doesn't have to work. So there is no incentive or penalty structure in the government sector to make sure that this runs, because in the Indian context, once you're in a government job, it's almost next to impossible to get him or her out. So it's very difficult for the government to actually run a service which requires the efficiency of an emergency medical service. And that's the reason why Indian governments have actually recognized and is now getting the private sector players to partner with them.
So I was looking at your the partnerships you had mentioned, and I know that the World Health Organization has done a lot in terms of writing guidelines and whatnot for pre-hospital trauma care systems, and I know that within that context there are a lot of the people who contributed to these guidelines are from India themselves, and I was wondering if you had any if you had any involvement with the World Health Organization.
No, we have not had a direct involvement with WHO, but one of the regional committee heads of the WHO has been extremely supportive in helping us in our training programs. Right now, the disaster management drill, which is being organized in Mumbai, is funded by UN agency, not WHO, but another UN agency.
This is related to the partnership. I was wondering if you could talk about any partnerships with the telecom industry in India.
So we, obviously, I mean, the number has to work across all telecom providers if it has to be universally accessible. So we have partnerships with all telecom providers to make sure that the number 1298 or 108 works on every phone, landline and mobile.
Is that a government mandate?
No, 1298 is a private mandate. 108 is a government mandate. So 1298 we have to persuade them to, but as soon as one telecom company comes on board, it's very easy. I mean, nobody wants to stay out.
I have a question. What percent of your rides are free in the free category? And my second question was, I didn't catch how many ambulances you have, how many vehicles you have around the country.
In the 1298 model, roughly 20% or nearabouts is free and subsidized. We can go up to 30%. But if we actually cross 30%, then the economics breaks down, and I mean, on a weekly or monthly basis, it's okay. But over a medium term, if the number of free trips cross 30%, free and subsidized cross 30%, then I mean, the economics break down. We now have 360 ambulances and 1,600 employees. The scale up is such that we will hit 1,000 ambulances by this time next year.
Venture capitalists, you said you get funding from. I'm curious to know, what's the basis of the pitch for a social mission-driven organization to venture capitalists?
So the basis, the basis was the importance of saving lives, providing universal access, and self-sustainability of the project. That is, we don't need charity income or grants to keep the organization running. That's what caught the attention of Acumen in round one. And of course, in round two, by round two, I mean, venture funds were actually proactively coming to us to partner with us. So, I mean, second round was not that tough. First round was a tough one.
So are you appealing at all to their interest in making money off of this, or I'm just curious, off of the investment?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So we if you know Acumen is investing in the equity. So they expect to make money in this investment.
Thank you.
Hey, can you talk a little bit about your current venture, Bribebusters, what you're learning from the pilot that you mentioned, and what the underlying business model is?
So obviously, Bribebusters won't work in situations of greed, overpowering regulations. It's not designed for that. But what we are trying to do, and this is something that a typical American or European doesn't face, because it's very rare that a US citizen faces a demand for bribe in your ordinary course of life. Whereas in developing countries, it is a challenge to even get one's legitimate entitlement, sometimes because of the discretionary powers vested with officers, or just their sheer ability to sit on disbursements or giving approvals, they, a market develops for bribe. It is to attack those kinds of demands for bribes where one is denied a legitimate entitlement to extract a bribe. And what we have devised is there is a set of tools. Primary one, which is based on Right to Information Act and bringing transparency out of it and pushing. What we have realized is that the common man doesn't want to pay bribe. I mean, they don't. Somebody doesn't wake up and say, "I'll pay the bribe," right? I mean, it's out of sheer desperation that they pay, or it's a question of cost. If I have to go 5 times to get a paper from an office, and that 5 days I have to take leave, there is a cost to that. And when somebody looks at that cost and say, I can, pay equivalent of 1 day's wage and get it done, that's how people end up paying a bribe. Common man ends up paying bribe. So we are trying to attack that segment where somebody doesn't want to pay the bribe but wants to get their legitimate entitlement, but they don't have any service, any backup, any agency to call. At best or at worst, they can call the cops, but if the cops are not helpful, they can't. So what we are trying to provide is, you have a problem. Your passport is stuck, and the guy is demanding, say, 2,000 rupees. You don't want to deal with it. You have to go report for work every day in the morning. You have your regular routine, stress, etc. You call us. We take on your responsibility of getting your passport back at a fee much lower than the bribe demanded, and that's the business model. And in the pilots that we have done, it's a balance of power game, right? So the officer who is corrupt, he has more skeletons in his or her cupboard. So when it becomes a balance of power, and when he or she sees a pushback coming, he or she runs faster than one can imagine. The issue is that there's no pushback happening, and that's when they become more aggressive. The moment there's a pushback, they just give the legitimate entitlement and get that person off the back. So this is not a remedy for cleansing the world of corruption. It's definitely not. But this is a remedy to face individual demands for bribes frontally.
I had a question about data analysis and impact evaluation. So it's clear that you're having an impact, but I just thought in terms of the 2611 response, you knew how many pickups, deaths, injury, etc. I mean, when one pictures the urban setting in India, you imagine horrible dense traffic and this sort of thing. You also talked about heart disease being the #1 killer, etc. I'm wondering about giving birth or other things. I mean, what kind of data do you collect or analysis to improve your services efficiency, operational, route choosing, etc., and just demonstration so that others can know all your good work?
So our key performance indicator that we do is from the time the call is received, reaching the patient is one key criteria. Second is how fast we can get the patient to a nearest hospital. Regarding the medical side, there have been few studies. We haven't done it. We have, for example, there's a New York Presbyterian team. There are teams which are doing independent studies, not 100%, but in bursts or a certain time period. some of these things can, can be very revealing. We have been running the ambulance in Mumbai for 6.5 years now. We have had one labor transfer, one pregnant lady, that too, an Indian lady, lady who had lived in US, who called the ambulance. In Rajasthan, we give, there are at least 3 to 5 births every day in the ambulances. So some of these data we are analyzing, and we are trying to learn from it. Gita and Joanna, who wrote the case, they did an analysis of the marketing efforts, awareness efforts in the slums of Mumbai. So those kinds of studies keep going on, and we learn from them.
What percentage of your transports are dead people? It was 90% before in general in the populace. What is it now?
Oh, we don't transport bodies at all, other than a life lost on board the ambulance in a critical stage. We transport to the destination so that they can, do the paperwork. Otherwise, we don't. I mean, it's plain and simple, right? This is a medically resourced ambulance. Now, if you're transporting body for the sake of revenue, getting that one, 2,000 rupees or 1,500 rupees, and a call comes in, and the ambulance is occupied, you're doing a huge disservice. So, from day one till now, we don't, and we have some very, very strict rules. Where one or two times when senior managers who use the ambulances for their transporting bodies of the relatives, etc., had to, were asked to immediately leave.
In the U.S., when an ambulance is, when the siren's going off, people give way, and traffic is more organized. In India, with the highways and the streets being so clogged, how does that impact your response time? And is that a major challenge where people essentially don't give way, or there's so much traffic that it becomes, you're there on time, or maybe you can't get there because of traffic, and it impacts, the person's health?
So it was a tough challenge in the beginning, and that is why if you see the ambulances in India, 99% of ambulances are painted white in color. We consciously went for a different color to send a message that these are life support ambulances and we are carrying live patients. So in the beginning it was difficult, but over time people know now in the areas that we serve that these ambulances only transport live victims or patients, and there is an emergency. So it has helped quite a bit. And at a second level, the traffic jams, traffic blocks actually point to the need of a robust ambulance service, because it's always better to be stuck in a medically equipped ambulance than getting stuck in traffic otherwise.
Hi, I was wondering if, sort of as an epilogue to the case, you can tell us where you stand in terms of building awareness for the service, and also if you have any insights about how to best market to your poorest clients.
Can you repeat that, the second part once more? If
you have any insights that you can share with us about how to best market to your poorest clients.
It's been a challenge. I'll give you two specific examples. The 1298 model, where there's actually a fee for service. We have been working through self-help groups and community groups to increase awareness. When the 108 ambulance service was launched, the service is actually free. But when the service was launched, there was a serious inhibition even amongst the poor to actually use the service, because culturally they have been ingrained to see dead body transfer, right? So the vehicle they have always seen as ambulance brings bodies, dead bodies. So there was a resistance to using it in spite of the service being absolutely free. So it took a lot of sensitization, lot of awareness creation, lot of drills, you know what I mean, drama being enacted in the villages where somebody falls sick and ambulance takes, etc. So that has been the radio has been very, very effective, and it's been both in urban and rural India. TV we would love to, but it's just too expensive.
Two quick questions. I noticed you wrote up there that you had advanced life support ambulances. So my first question is, who's staffing those? What kind of training do they have? And then my second question is, in terms of collecting money, how do you do that?
So the advanced life support ambulances are also staffed by EMTs trained to New York Presbyterian standards. That's a US EMT standards. The challenge that we face there is there's no recognition of that or accreditation of that by Indian governments. And so what we do is that we recruit basic nursing graduates so that they have a nursing registration to be able to medically intervene. What was the second?
How do you collect money?
Yeah, collecting the money is the team actually collects it, and we keep a track of it. And in Mumbai, it's collected by a person going in the semi-urban areas. They deposit it in ATMs.
So it's all cash.
It's all cash.
Okay. Yeah.
So I guess one of the things, obviously, that's really unique and has worked about this model is the multi-tier pricing and being able to access the poorest customers and obviously using the paying customers to subsidize that. And obviously the model itself sounds like it was quite new in terms of transporting not just bodies, but transporting people who needed the medical attention. Have you seen, as you've sort of proved the profitability of this, have you seen or the threat of any sort of competitors coming in and just trying to take, without that social mission, trying to take that upper tier and then threatening the overall sustainability of the model with the social component?
So the competition actually has a very, very elastic pricing. We have a standardized pricing, right? So for example, in Mumbai, if our ambulance is not available and somebody were to call, they are so tuned to price it based on the tone and tenor of the caller. So if they see it as an emergency, they for the 1,500 rupees at that time, they may raise it to 6,000 rupees. So that's how the pricing happens. So since they are a competition, but as a network of ambulances and standardized service protocol, there's no, there's hardly any competition for us.
If you don't mind, can I ask one? What is your standard pricing for a private hospital transport in, say, Mumbai, in a large city?
So in Mumbai, private hospital is 1,500 rupees.
1,500 rupees, and competitors are charging a lot more.
So the competitors, when we actually went into the market, the price for the same service, that is up to 15 kilometers, 1 hour travel, they used to charge 4,000 to 5,000 rupees.
Yeah, so $1,500 rupees is $30. Yeah. And in terms of scale, have you projected over the next 10 years how many ambulances you're going to deploy if you have the capital funding? What's the goal?
So there's an interesting thing that you have to understand. Emergency transport in the developed markets, that is US and Europe, North America and Europe, the emergency transport constitute only 25% of medical transport. The remaining 75% ambulance usage is for non-emergency transport, but live patients, who are not in a medical emergency as such, but maybe for diagnostic, in the hospital transfer, etc. So what we believe will happen over the next 10 years in India is that the 911 kind of service, which is the 108, will spread all around the country as a public-private partnership, and the 1298 model will or can spread to take care of the non-emergency transport.
Just one last comment. I mean, you have some world-class organizations, behind you. But in order to grow, have you considered using maybe celebrity endorsements or just to spread? Like you said, there was a challenge reaching out to the poor, but the poor they worship Bollywoods. Have you considered tapping into that talent or the celebrity stars to maybe promote your service to sort of the slums and sort of like the slumdog market?
We've just started that in Kerala using Kerala film stars. In Bollywood, we have served several Bollywood star families, but for obvious reasons, we don't want to go and ask them. Those whom we have served, there have been a few offers, but the problem is not they endorsing. The sheer cost of advertising in Mumbai is sometimes even higher than New York City. The billboard space, and that is the challenge, and that we are finding it difficult to get pro bono.
I was wondering, how do you incentivize your workers? Do you use any stock options? How far down the chain does that reach?
One, it is a no stock. The stock options have just been implemented for the management team. At the field staff level, the EMT or nurses, there is a natural high turnover because Indian nursing graduates get offers from US to Europe to Middle East, and after they undergo the training that we provide, they are a serious target for poaching. So, that we have now built into the system that, they will only stay for a certain period of time. The drivers, on the other hand, once they join, they don't want to leave, but they're very comfortable with the stability of the job. The challenge which we fear right now is that we're growing in size, right? We are fearful of labor unions taking roots among the drivers. We had a problem once in Mumbai when a right-wing Hindu group actually organized and created a situation, but we just dealt it very, very firmly, we said zero tolerance in discipline issues. And we had to actually shut down the service for a month in Mumbai.
Great questions. Thank you, Shaffi, again. And last closing anecdote. Shaffi was one of 21 business people in India who met President Obama on his recent trip, and he was quoted in the New York Times as well, and he might be able to share some insights with you later on. Thank you again for coming, and thank you very much, Shaffi.
I think the president is much more popular in India right now than around here. Right? So he did charm India in this trip for sure. He said all the right things that India at large wanted to hear, and didn't use the outsourcing comments that he used here at all. So thank you very much for having us over. If any of you travel to India, please do look us up and visit us. We would love to have you come and see what we're doing and get your comments, criticisms, guidance, etc. Because many a times, one of the things that we have realized is that when one gets into the routine of operations, you become oblivious to things, and that's what we love the universities and teams from universities who come in. Sometimes they come in and see it, and it's so stark and clear to them, whereas it's not to us. And it has helped us tremendously in improving our service and organization at every stage. Thank you, Geeta, for that.